Welcome to you guys here in person. Welcome online. And welcome to those who are watching this at their leisure later. And I let them know who are here today also, Joan, that I'm going to send a link to this recording so you can watch this anytime to refresh yourself. And this goes for everybody. If you have questions about this at any time, please send me an email and I'm more than happy to answer the questions. Today we're going to learn a little bit about Tai Chi walking and how to meditate, those two things. Everything I'm going to teach today was taught to me by people who are much smarter and more accomplished than me, but I luckily have this awesome platform of teaching people strength and wellness. So I find these things have benefited a lot of my clients and myself. So I just figured I would share them with all of you. And in a way, learn more about them myself by teaching them, which seems to be, to me, to be the way that you learn a lot more about stuff this way also. If anyone has any questions throughout, please feel free to ask. I'm not here to do a lecture. It's nice when it's cooperative, so I'm always happy to answer any questions you have. So starting off with the Tai Chi walking, basically, if I could explain it quickly, it's just a way to walk that will make you feel more sure-footed, more well-balanced. It'll make you feel like you have better posture because you do. It's also will really allow you to feel your legs working, your entire leg. So all the way from your lower leg and your calf, front and back, to your thighs, your hamstrings, and very importantly, your glutes, because the glutes are the biggest muscles we have, and they are what really powers us when we move. And sometimes if we're walking in a way that's not as efficient, we will not be using the glutes as well as we should. And over time, especially as we age, we will tend to sometimes tighten up, and at the front, our hip flexors tighten, and it doesn't let our glutes work as much because that's the opposite muscle of tension. And then that also can create forward leaning posture. So changing how you walk, because we do walk a lot, will also be healthy for helping with what's called upper lower cross syndrome, which is just a fancy way for saying a bit of a slouch in the upper back and a bit of a sitting back of the hips, which is not as an efficient way of moving. So the first thing we're going to rock. We're going to rock hard. Okay, not really that hard, but we're still going to rock. So what we want to identify, first of all, is we want to identify what is a neutral standing posture. That's the most relaxed posture we can come up with. So what I mean by relaxed is not completely relaxed, because if we were completely relaxed right now, we'd all be lying on the floor. Yeah, it would be more than that. It would be actually lying on the floor, because you would have no muscles. Your muscles wouldn't be tense at all, and so you'd be lying down, like when we sleep, completely relaxed. We can do that part in the meditation, but actually, I don't recommend lying meditation because mostly the time you'll fall asleep, right? So it's not always the most recommended, but you can do it. But the caution is, of course, that when you're lying down and you're into a relaxed state, you will often fall asleep. So we will talk about that also. Okay, so what we mean by relaxation is if we're standing up in the most relaxed position, it means that no one side of the muscles on our body are working harder than the other. So that would mean that we're in balance, right? So for example, if I'm slightly hunched forward, I'm not evenly balanced in what muscles are having to work on one side or the other, because I've pulled myself forward. So there's going to be muscles that are tightening to try to stop me from going all the way and falling forward. When I'm in the middle, all the muscles relax because your skeleton is holding you in position. And then that is the way that we've been built, is to have us the most relaxed position where our skeleton is the most stacked up, you could say, like on top of each other. So the first thing I have to think about with this is we have to think about our feet. So if you stand with your feet about, let's say, like kind of like between like hip and shoulder width apart, and you need to, in a very basic way, think about a bit of a kind of a partial kind of like L shape. So if you bring your attention to the balls of your feet, okay, so not the bottom of the toes, but the actual area just further down, those knuckles, you want to try to have an even weight distribution between the balls of your feet, the outside edge of your foot, and your heel. So right away, you'll find yourself rocking to find that. If you were too far back, you will rock yourself forward. If you're too far forward, you'll rock yourself back. What you'll feel when you have, as much as you can, an even distribution between the balls of the feet, the outside edge of the foot, and the heel, is you'll feel there's an empty spot in the middle, which is basically where your arch is, okay? What some people will find is if they tend to sort of have a bit of like a collapsed arch, is when they think about evenly weighting the outside edge, suddenly the arch lightens. Because to get the outside edge even, you actually have to use the muscles up that are up here, and the muscles that rotate in your hips as well, that rotate your legs outwards. You have to turn those muscles on to get that weight on the outside edge. And what you can do is try doing the opposite. Let your knees cave in and let your arches collapse. Feel all that weight on the inside. So now you kind of have like even weight between like your big toe knuckle, the inside edge of your foot, and kind of the inside edge of your heel. But when you go to the outside edge and you even it out across the balls of the feet and the heel, you feel that then the arch is empty. And we want that because the arch should be empty, because the arch is like this and underneath the arch would be emptiness, right? And like an architectural arch or a doorway or what have you, right? So this is very important because that means you're on the middle of the foot. If you're on the middle of your foot, your body has to be evenly over top of your foot as well. It's very hard to feel an even balance between the balls of the feet, the outside edge, and the heel. Oh, my wife Emily has joined us. Yes, you guys, if you don't want to be on camera, you can stand for a little bit. So this way, already, without even doing anything else that we're going to do, your body is essentially right in the middle. Because the only way you can feel that evenness is your body has to be in the middle. And you can play around with that. Rock your body forward. You feel more weight on the balls of your feet, right? Rock your body back to the center. You feel that it's even. Rock your body back to the heels, and you feel that you have more weight in your heels. Your body is not straight up and down over your feet, okay? Number two, really imagine, which is helpful to imagine, we call this, they call this in the world of Tai Chi, a balance beam line. The balance beam line is if you look down at your foot and you look at the middle of your foot, which for most of us is going to be around where the shoelaces would tie. That's going to be about the equal distant middle of your foot between your heel and your toes. Imagine a line that goes from foot to foot. Okay, we call that the balance beam line. For the right hip position, you want to align your perineum with the balance beam line. Okay, there's no delicate way to say what the perineum is, but the perineum is that piece that's in between your genitals and your anus. That's what the perineum is. So it's basically right in the center of your hips. So if I'm aiming the perineum ahead of the balance beam line, that means I've tightened my butt too much, right? And so my perineum is pointing forward, but I'm going to be leaning back now because I've got my glutes too tight. If I have it pointing behind the balance beam line, that means I'm sitting my hips back and my posture is not going to be proper. So if you align it right over the balance beam line, you're going to notice that your hips are neither thrust forward or pushed backwards. You're going to feel that you're kind of holding them evenly in the center. So what you're doing is, if you think about your hips like a bowl, if you're pointing your perineum behind the balance beam line, you're spilling the water out of the bowl forwards. If you're pointing your perineum, thrusting your hips forward, and you're pointing the perineum ahead of the balance beam line, you're spilling the water out of the back of the bowl. But if you align with the balance beam line, the bowl is even. You kind of understand that, what we're talking about there? Yeah. So this means that your hips are in their even position and your musculature is relaxed more from front to back. And you can experiment with that too by when you squeeze your butt and you pop your hips forward, you feel your butt is tighter than the front. If you push your hips back, you feel you'll be tighter in the front because your thighs are now kind of holding your body weight up more. But if you put it in the middle, you notice a relaxation by comparison to the front and the back. And that's kind of what we're looking at. That's what we talk about relaxation, right? Your skeleton is in its designed position, right? You shouldn't have a lot, no, in the neutral position, you shouldn't have to be squeezing your butt really, right? You should just be, you can hold it. So Here's the thing about it is there might be a bit of glute tension, because if there's absolutely none, your hips might be sitting back and you might be pointing behind the balance beam line. So you might need a little bit of light tension, but it's not going to be any more than the tension you have in your thighs at the front than at the back. So that's number 2. Number 3, the rib cage has to be tucked in. Okay, and everybody here has learned strength stuff from me. And we know that we talked about the cylinder. So everybody knows about that. If your rib cage is neutral, it's not popping out, right? So if everyone pops your rib cage out, you feel what happens. You're no longer aligned. Your shoulders are behind your hips, right? If you push it down too much, you really push it down, well, now you're hunched forward and your shoulders are ahead of your hips. But if you stand up straight and you just squeeze your abs to maintain that, now your rib cage is going to be sitting evenly over top of that hip bowl that we've created, right? So now again, this allows us to then elevate the sternum. So we can lift the sternum up, but we're not going like this. Lift the sternum, pop the whole rib cage. We're lifting the sternum, but we're keeping the rib cage in a neutral position. What that sternum lift allows us to do is get our shoulders to just sit over top of our hips. So here again, we're talking about neutral. If you pull your shoulders back as hard as you can, not very neutral, because I don't think I need to tell you what muscles are tighter. Your back muscles are tighter because you're yanking your shoulders back. If you pull your shoulders forward like this, your chest muscles are tighter than your back muscles. So that's not even, or what we would call relaxed, right? If you just let your shoulders naturally sling and hang over your hips, now you're neither tight in the chest or the back. You're evenly working the muscles on both sides. And then the final part is the top of your head reaching for the ceiling. Now, they do say in the world of Tai Chi crown, but what they mean by crown is different than the crown that we know. We know the crown is it's a bit back behind the head, kind of where you have a cowlick sometimes. So when you say crown to the ceiling, people would do this. They tip their neck down. But the crown in the martial arts world is the top of the head, because what you're trying to do is create space between your vertebra of your neck. So you'll notice that if you lift the top of your head to the ceiling, your chin will tuck in naturally. It'll just happen, right? So now now there are actually 15 points in the world of Tai Chi to think about all at the same time for posture, but that's a lot. I will include those in the email I send the link. So if you want to, you can start expanding your practice by thinking about all 15. Because if you can think about all 15, you will be in perfect alignment. And if someone tries to interrupt it, you know what's being interrupted and you can change that alignment. Yes?
Sometimes I hear someone posture, they say like a string on top of your head pulling up.
Yeah, like I often use, when I'm talking about people about posture, I often use a bit of like a sort of like grisly idea of, imagine that somebody, you guys might have heard me say this, but that somebody drilled under local anesthetic, we'll say, Al, okay, so we know it's not too painful. They drilled a hole in the top of your head and put a hook in there, right? And then they took an elastic band or a string and they attached that to the ceiling and it hooked around the hook. Yeah, if there's just lines along every sidewalk with hooks and if we were just walking along like this, then we'd all be Tai Chi walking. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's more like yeah, just an idea, something to think about. So if we just quickly ideas that we have an even distribution of weight between the balls of our feet, so all the way along the knuckles of the toes, the outside edge of the foot, and the heel. Number one. Number two, just that you'll notice that what you have to do is you have to kind of sometimes sort of use the muscles up here to kind of spin your legs outwards a little bit. You sort of feel that. Number two is the perineum being over the balance beam line. So that's keeping your hips in neutral position. Number three is keeping your rib cage tucked into neutral, then lifting your chest up with your sternum up with the rib cage tucked into neutral. Shoulders then will be much more easily held over top of your hips. And then you're reaching the top of your head to the ceiling, okay? So we got the feet, we've got the legs a little bit, we've got the hips, we've got the rib cage, the sternum, shoulders, and the top of the head, okay? And what you'll notice is if you hold that position and you focus on those things, you will feel quite relaxed in your posture. You won't notice your front or back fighting harder to hold you in a position. And so you could theoretically stand this way for the longest without fatigue because you're actually utilizing your skeletal structure, not your musculature, to hold you in position. Now, in order for us to find how to find the middle, we want to go to the outside edges to understand where the middle is. So holding that position, you slowly start rocking your body forward from the ankles, and you feel the weight come to the front of your foot, and you feel your heels lighten, okay? And then I want you just to sit there, stand there rather for a second, and feel what's tight. Just feel what your body feels like, okay? Feel what muscles are tight, maybe in your legs, in your upper body, shoulders, toes, right? Everything that tightens. Now, rock back to the middle. And notice the tension melt away when you hit the middle, because now you're even, right? Now, rock to your heels. You won't be able to rock back as far. You feel your toes lighten. One thing you'll definitely feel is your abs are going to turn on trying to hold you in that position. You'll feel more muscle tension because you have to, or else you would fall backwards. Now, rock back to the center again and redo the center. You notice that the muscles that tensed when you went backwards have now relaxed. You've now relaxed those muscles. So the rocking exercise is just that. You find your neutral with those neutral points. You rock forward and you just notice what tightens. How does it feel? You rock back to the middle and you notice what the evenness, relaxed feeling feels like. You rock backwards. You notice what tightens. You rock back to the center. So you always want to go to the center before you don't want to go backwards and forwards. You always want to go to the center in between, because the center is what tells you what the difference is between the backwards and the forwards. The idea of this is that if you practice rocking a lot, eventually you recognize the forward shift sooner, right? Sooner than, you don't have to be here to recognize it, right? Where you have to step forward. You learn to recognize it sooner. You learn to recognize the fact that you're starting to go backwards sooner, because you're in tune with what muscles tighten as you go backwards and as you go back to neutral, as you go forwards and as you go back to neutral. So this is a very key thing. It's good for us to be able to do because it teaches us exactly where balanced position is. And it's very important when we start doing Tai Chi walking, because we are going to be spending time having to balance on one foot. So we need to understand what balance feels like in the center of the foot when we're standing on one foot. Our body needs to be in the right position. So the rocking practice, that's something I think everyone should just do forever. And the great thing about rocking practice is you can do it anywhere and no one will notice, right? I mean, they might see you slightly rocking back and forward, and I guess that actually might stop, people who you don't want to talk to approaching you, because they'll be like, geez, they're just standing there rocking. I don't know about that. But, like I practice this, like standing in a lineup at Costco. Like you can kind of practice it anywhere. And especially as you start rocking less and noticing more, you're rocking. Because what you want to remember is when we actually stand in the middle, we are rocking, because you cannot stand directly in the middle. You're always adjusting forward or back. It's like standing on the head of a pin. That's exactly where the middle is. It's the head of a pin. So if you slightly go forward, you're always going forward and backwards slightly. You're also always slightly rocking side to side, because it's impossible. It's just like taking a bike and trying to stand a bike up and letting go. You can't do it, right? But when you sit on a bike, you can hold it when you're sitting on it, because your body understands how to adjust to be able to keep the bike. Because it's crazy. Like you could never balance a bike, right? I've tried it many times as a kid, especially. I just stand there and you thought you had the middle, you let it go, it's not the middle. But when you sit on it, you can very easily find the middle, because you're able to constantly make the adjustments. But you're not doing this. You're actually riding completely straight. Even slowly, you can be pretty straight. Now, moving on to the Tai Chi walking, because after all, that's what we're all here for, right? We didn't just come here to rock back and forth, did we, Joan? No. Em's like, I just came here for the rocking. I'm out of here. Okay. So the things I'm going to show you today are very simple, but there's a phrase in strength training and many other things, which is simple, not easy. So they're very simple. And the great thing about it being simple is it's not a lot to remember. And the stuff you have to practice is not that much. But getting good at it just requires practicing often. And the more you practice, it's just like meditation. Like the more you do it, the more you get out of it, right? The more you practice this, the more you feel it, the more you will notice if you're doing it or not doing it when you're out and about. And eventually, if you could do it most of the time, that's what your real goal is, because there's no possible way anyone can do any discipline exactly right, perfectly the same every single time. It's not really possible. But if we can do it mostly good, then we're fine. Okay, so put your feet at about hip width apart. So that's like about the width, which hip width is obviously about the width that you're going to use when you're walking. So that's why I use this width. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to rock. So does everybody here know what foot is the foot they balance on the best? You know that, Al? Okay, okay. So if you don't know, just balance on one foot, count to 5 or 6, balance on the other foot, and just feel which one feels like the foot you balance on best. Because we'll start with that foot, okay? Okay. So whatever foot you balance on best, keeping the other foot on the ground, I just want you to shift all your weight over that foot. But try to maintain the evenness of the balls of the feet, the outside edge, and the heel. What you will notice is that you're going to have a bit more weight on the outside edge. That's just the way it is, right? The other thing we have to notice is that if we want to balance on one foot, our head has to be over top of the foot. If you put your head over top of the foot, you get your head to go right over top of your foot, then bring your head in to more in the middle. You'll see that it's hard to keep all the weight on that foot and not have a bit of weight on this foot. But if you put the head over the foot, you notice that it's the easiest way to lift the other foot up. And if you keep your head over your foot, enough of your torso weight is over that foot that you can reliably balance on that foot. And if your head drifts in, the whole body drifts in and you slowly are falling inwards. So to balance well on one foot, you have to get your head over your foot. Even if you have to slightly kink a bit here in the low back, just a little bit to feel that feeling, you'll see that if you bring your head right over, it's much easier to balance on one foot. And when we're walking and running, when people sprint or even when you walk, if your head goes over your foot, that's when you're actually balanced over the foot. So put a little weight on that foot, and we're going to get the head over the foot. We're going to try to maintain that posture. So now that posture with the weight on the balls of the feet, outside edge, and the heel, slightly spinning the knee outwards a bit so it aligns with the toes, making sure that our hip is still in that nice even position, our rib cage is tucked in, our sternum is up, our shoulders are dropping over the hips, and the top of the head is reaching for the ceiling. And then you can come up onto the toe of the other foot. Now, from here, holding that position, we're going to take the other foot, we're going to extend it out like this. And then we're going to put it on the ground. Okay, now, what we want to notice is, when we put it on the ground, did we put weight onto it at all? Or did we just drop it on the ground? If you dropped it on the ground, you should be able to, without anything changing on this side, do this. You should be able to lift it up and down with absolutely no change because there's no weight on it. So that's the goal, is to be able to do that, to be able to lift it up and down without putting weight on it. Now, we've got it on the ground, okay? So it's going to help us balance a bit, but we want to make sure we still have the weight on the standing leg. Now, I want you to press that heel into the ground, like you're trying to dig into the ground. But when you press it into the ground, don't let weight shift to it. You want to make sure that you're pressing it into the ground and you're just holding that pressure. And the weight is still on the other foot. The posture, you're still working on that posture. Then you're going to start pulling and dragging that foot. And then as that foot flattens, you transfer all your weight to that foot. But you transfer it to the center, right? So what you want to watch out for is that you haven't come like this, where you're actually leaning your body forward with your weight on it. You have to still have this upright position, so that you could, with all your weight on it, you should be able to lift your back toe off the ground like this and be perfect and be balanced on that foot, right? This is the practice of it, because you can Tai Chi walk faster, more easily. But if you work on this practice, Even if you can't do it perfectly, it doesn't mean you can't Tai Chi walk, but this will make it better, right? And it's also a great practice of single leg balance. Then the other foot comes forward, and exactly the same thing. The heel lands on the ground without you dropping weight onto it or letting your body come forward. You're standing nice and upright. You dig the heel into the ground, but you don't put weight on it when you dig it. You got to stay up tall over the other foot. Like at any point here, you should still be able to lift that foot off the ground and nothing should change in your posture. Then you pull with that foot. You pull. And when that foot comes flat, you find that ball the feet outside edge heel, and then you see that the back foot is off the ground, but everything is still very tall. So essentially what's happening, I'm going to use a prop here. Al, you'll remember my logical Spock mask for when things get illogical. So here's your torso, okay? This is a very weird torso, but you know, with the Spock mask, you can at least see what it is. So here's your head, here's your body, and here's your hips, right? Most of the time when people are walking, this is what's happening. The body's pitched forward like this, or it's just always slightly pitched forward. So they kind of call that, like they often used to describe walking as falling while moving, where you're kind of like, you're all like when the foot lands, the weight is on the foot, right? And so as soon as you land your foot, the weight's on the foot and your body is slightly tipped forward. And this is sometimes why if you catch your foot, you're already going forward because your weight is already forward. Tai Chi walking, what it does is it takes from hips to top of the head and it moves it like this. Completely straight with no forward tipping because the weight is always balanced over one foot, okay? And if you, I'll do it very slowly and just watch my torso and notice how that's what happens, you see? From ears to shoulders to hips, it stays completely upright as I do it. I have to keep my abs working. I have to keep my sternum up. I have to keep my shoulders over top of my hips. I have to keep top of my head reaching for the ceiling. So it means that every footfall is completely balanced because your torso is riding like this without a forward lean. What that also means is that if you, I often describe it as, imagine if you didn't have any legs. So you imagine yourself as a torso with no legs. And then somebody invented this amazing invention is these robotic legs. And you were like, this is amazing. Now I'll be able to get around and do stuff, right? They would put your torso on top of these robotic legs. Your robotic legs would have a tray, right, for your torso to go on. It wouldn't make sense for that tray to be tipped forward. Did you turn the heating up a bit? Oh, was it not up? I thought I did. Oh, sorry. I think it readjusted itself. I actually set it to 22 when I came in, but I think the timer went off. Sorry about that, everyone. It should be, but because it's a little chillier outside, like this is not a very well insulated space, so it needs that a lot. So what we see that if we had these robotic legs, we wouldn't want the tray that our torso went into to be tipped forward because we'd fall off forward, right? If the tray of the torso was tipped backwards, our torso would fall off backwards. So the only way that these robotic legs would work is the torso tray would have to be completely flat, and it would never be able to, it would never tip forward or never tip backwards, right? Because if it did, obviously, we would topple off, right? So if you imagine that your torso is placed on top of that tray of your hips, having your perineum pointing to the balance beam line keeps your hips flat. So what's happening when you're doing Tai Chi walking is you're imagining that your torso and you're keeping your core tight so your posture good. On top of that tray, the legs are now pulling, just pulling your torso along. What you feel when you do the pulling is think about your glutes. So if you just go back into doing the Tai Chi walking, you can go a little faster, dig your heel in the ground and pull yourself forward. You'll see that when you come up to the straight leg, your butt muscle is on because it has to be to keep your hips neutral. When you step the other leg out and you pull, that other glute is on. So because the hips are neutral, the glutes get to work. Now, just speed it up a little bit. Just try and walk a little bit faster. So think about what we're doing with that posture, right? Think about your hip position. Nice and tall, so your shoulders are over top of your hips, and you're thinking about kind of dragging your foot along the ground as you step. You're dragging that foot along the ground. Yeah, so the forward foot is kind of pulling you forward. And then when you hit the middle of it, your other leg comes out. Your other leg comes out. So to make it like very exaggerated, it's kind of, make sure I can be seen here. It's kind of like this, like it goes out and drags, out, drag. And you see, in order, doing that, your torso will never pitch forward. You'll always be completely straight up and down, right? And that's the effect that we're going for, is that our torso stays completely straight up and down over top of our hips. We're not committing weight forward, because if I commit my weight forward and I'm on this angle, I've rocked myself forward, so I'm no longer even. But if I'm here, I'm completely even into the floor. So gravity is there, and we want to be dropping our center of mass directly down into the gravity. We don't want our center of mass going ahead or behind. We want it dropping directly down at 90-degree angle. And by walking like this, not only is it really good for your posture, because you have to have good posture, but it also makes your leg muscles work to their utmost, because of the nature of, if you keep your torso over top and you maintain that tallness, the straightness, you're not dropping weight on your heel, but you're putting the heel down and you're pulling yourself forward. You see that immediately you have a taller posture. You feel a little bit more stable over top of your feet, because you never have this forward position. And of course, the added bonus is, when you walk into a room like this, everyone takes you very seriously, because deep inside, the brain knows that when a person walks in tall, confident, head up, with eye contact, our brain just knows that's a confident person. So it works very well in that regard. Also, there's many benefits to it. Now, it takes a little bit of time sometimes to get good at it, right? Like, you have to practice it. You have to practice that slow pulling and getting that feeling of how you're balanced over the foot before the other foot comes out, and that you're not sort of doing a more standard thing of just kind of like plonk, 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 just kind of throwing your foot forward and landing on it. So you can think of the differences like, you don't have to land on that foot. You choose to put your foot down. It's not something that's just a foregone conclusion. Another thing that you'll notice when you practice this, if you want a bit of feedback on whether or not you're doing it well, is walk somewhat quickly like this, then stop. If you can just stop and stick your leg out and not put weight on it, you know you're doing it right, right? If you're walking quickly and you put your leg out and you have to put your foot down like that, it means that you threw yourself forward and you gave yourself no choice but to land your foot on the ground. But you can see that I can walk quite quickly. I'll start from over here. I can walk quite quickly. I can stop immediately because of the nature of the posture and the nature of the way that I'm putting my foot down on the ground. And I remember I just one of the times I noticed this, I was in Safeway one night, and the announcement came up that they were closing in 5 minutes. And so I'm like, oh, God, like all this stuff I got to get. So I'm, and I just happened to be thinking about Tai Chi walking. So I'm walking along and I come to the end of the aisle. And right as I come, this cart appears, of course, because it's a blind corner, right? And I remember I just was like, oh, and then I kicked the ground. I'm like, wait a minute. Wow, I'm doing Tai Chi walking. I actually just did it naturally without too much thought. Huh, okay. Because otherwise, if I was just barreling forward, it would have taken me a couple steps to stop. I would have ran right into the cart. But because I was walking with really good posture and I was striking, pulling, I was actually able to just stick my leg out and then bring it back again. So it also means that if you do see something that you shouldn't be stepping on, you can actually stop yourself, right, before you step on it. And it's a good way of testing yourself when you're doing the Tai Chi walking. It's a good way to test yourself of whether or not it's working, by just try to stop, right? Pull along. And what you'll also notice when you're doing it is you'll notice that you're walking from your hips, because we're trying to keep the hips flat. If we imagine that we're those we have those robotic legs. Because we're pulling ourselves along with those robotic legs and our hip is neutral, your focus is going to be on your hips. And you can notice that when you're walking, you're not really thinking about your upper body too much. All the propulsion, you can feel how the legs are propelling you. You're driving with your glutes, and it's all about the hips. And like I said before, you can get the feeling of how to do this today for sure, right? You'll notice a little bit like, oh, I can kind of feel how it's a little bit different. But the way you really will notice and you'll actually get good at it is you have to do it for a while. And then one day you'll just notice, oh my gosh, this actually feels better. Wow, yeah, I really can feel how I'm propelling myself with my legs.
Life, and that's what gets sore first. Just doing this little different. Then pain happen.
Yeah, that's really interesting, right? Because the balance is helping your lower back probably to feel better because your abs are being forced into holding tight, because that's part of the posture is that rib cage tuck, right? And suddenly your back is getting supported more by your abs. Now, another thing we can talk a little bit about is how do we change direction? Because direction change is something that will often throw us into the, let's just call it the old way of walking. Now that we are always going to be Tai Chi walking forever, I guess we can now talk about the old way of walking as that was the old way. Yes. Okay, so if I'm going to change direction, the classic way most people will do it if they're not trying to focus on posture and using their legs a bit more is the head will lead. So the head looks and then the body follows. So as you can see, if my head leads and then my shoulders go, I'm no longer balanced over my foot. And you can feel it, right? You just try that. Stand like this, turn your head, let your head and shoulders go first. You feel you're kind of tipping, right? And then what happens is your next step is a fall because you pitched your body forward, right? So what you've done is you've left, we'll bring the Spock wig back out again. You've left this gliding torso away and you've turned it like, you've tipped it like sideways. So now when you make your next move, it's tipped sideways. So when your foot lands, this is forward of your body. Your foot, you can't land in balance. You have to land with weight on your foot and committed, and you can't take it back because this is now going to go beyond the point of no return. Whereas if you turn like this way, by spinning, you can turn and step exactly as you do in Tai Chi walk-in. I'll demonstrate that for you. So obviously it would make sense because I remember as a kid, there was those infomercials and one of them was about looking before you leap. And it was like a diving board and a kid running off the diving board and he jumps up in the air. And then the commercial, like it's a black screen comes on and says, look before you leap. And then the next thing is it shows just an empty pool. Obviously, they didn't show the kid in the pool, but the idea, it was like a kid safety thing. Like, hey, you know, your friends are doing crazy stuff. Like, don't just go do it. Look before you leap because, you know, you wouldn't want to dive into an empty pool, right? It's kind of the same thing here. Is like in life, we don't generally just go without looking where we're going, right? We like to look. So that's why the head will lead. If I have to go over there, I'm not just going to be like, I'm walking along like, I know Shoppers is over there. I've got to go to Shoppers. We don't tend to do this and then go, right? We will look to see that it's a clear space, and then we will turn our body. So looking is important. We have to look. What we don't want to do is look and then go with the upper body, kind of like throw ourselves into the turn. So to turn in this manner, if you just stand on one foot but have your toe up like this, okay? If I'm going to turn this way, so let's say I'm going to turn to my right. I look to my right because it's good to see where I'm going, but I'll initiate my turn from the hip, you see? And what that does is it spins the spine this way. It doesn't lean the spine over, it spins it. Because if your abs are tight, when you turn your hip, your whole upper body has to follow like this way, here. So I look, I step. Then I can actually land my foot and look. I don't need to have weight on my foot when I land it there because I spun my torso. I'm still balanced over my back foot. Then I pull. And then I go into Tai Chi walking. So if you guys just walk slowly and experiment with that. Walk, look, turn. Walk, look, turn. Direct the turn from your hips. Think about your hips. Turn from your hips. So you can turn by turning a foot out like this, right? But you can also turn by turning in this way. Like you can go that way with using your outside leg, because when you go to step, you turn your head, but your hips turn you. So that way, the tray of the robotic legs that your torso is on turns, and then your foot steps, and then you turn like this. And you don't have to then lean your spine, right? And really focus on that tall posture. Make sure you're lifting the top of your head to the ceiling. Feel like you're creating space between all of your vertebrae. This also makes you feel lighter when you walk. Now, I remember when I first started taking yoga very seriously when I lived in Toronto, and I went 3-4 days a week. I remember after about 2 weeks, I was walking up Bathurst, and I felt like an animal. Like I felt like a jungle cat, because I was so tall and aligned, and my body was working kind of perfectly. And I was a real sloucher back then. And I realized, oh my God, if you just walk with like proper posture, everything feels lighter, because that's the way our body is designed, is to actually have proper posture. It's not designed to be walking in a hunch manner. Everything ends up tightening up. And you see, when you don't want to ever forget the upper body cues, the ribs tucked in, top of the head reaching for the ceiling. And then you feel you're walking from your hips. When you change direction, your head looks, your hips turn. And it's just a new way of thinking about it. As you're walking, the head looks, but the torso, the hips turn. So what you'll notice too is that as your hip turns, your shoulder turns at exactly the same time. Because if your abs are tight and your ribs are tucked in, the minute your hip goes, your abdominal muscles have connected your hip to your rib cage, right? If your abs are tight, you can't turn your hip without your rib turning at the same time. So you spin, which means that now when I turn, I'm in balance over my feet. And you can do it going backwards, forwards, sideways. You're really trying to spin that torso over top of the hips. Another great added benefit of this, actually, I was talking about to a client a couple weeks ago. He was asking me, how can I quickly lose 3 or 4 inches around my waist? And I said, how quickly? He said, like by next weekend. And I said, well, okay. I'm sure, if you know of a good cosmetic surgeon who can get you in that quickly, liposuction, okay? Because that'll definitely work. Hey, it was there, it's gone, right? But apart from that, what could you do to make your waist appear smaller? If everybody just do this, slouch like that, and just put your hand on your stomach. We all know that our stomach sticks out more when we slouch, because we've taken what was stretched and we've made it compressed, and we've now made it look larger because we've crushed it into a smaller area, right? Now, if we all stand up, right, tall, but we also squeeze our abs to keep our ribs tucked in, suddenly we've probably lost about 3 inches from right before. So if you're standing tall, everything that's here is stretching upwards. And the more upwards you stretch it, A, you're taking it that went out, it's going up, so now it's going in. B, because you're squeezing your abs, you're pulling with the abdominal muscles, transverse abdominis, and the six-pack muscles, they're drawing in. So also, you look more svelte. Added bonus to Tai Chi walking. You're more balanced, you're using your legs properly, you're more relaxed over your whole system, so overall, you're gonna have less tension in your body. You're gonna be more stable on your feet, less likely to fall, all that great stuff. But how about also you're gonna look even better? Can't beat that either, right? So there's another good reason for the Tai Chi walking. So essentially, that is Tai Chi walking right there. It starts with the rocking to understand the posture. It moves then to balancing on the one foot and being able to hold that posture on one foot. Then it goes to extending the leg and being able to balance on one foot. If you can't, that's fine. Just extend it and put your heel down, but try to not put weight on the heel, or try to put less weight on the heel as time goes on. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. We just want to know what we're working towards. We're working towards being able to do this with nothing changing. But if it's a bit like, oh, a bit of weight, but then you readjust and you go back, that's also fine. Like, it doesn't really matter. Like, we just have to work towards it. If you have to put a little bit of weight on it, but next week you put less weight on it. That's also progress too, and we don't want to worry about that either. Then we've got that position and we drive the heel into the ground, and we try to not put weight when we drive the heel. We try to stay tall. We pull to the flat foot, and then we feel how we transfer our weight onto that foot with the back heel up, with the rib cage tucked in and the shoulders over the hips, top of the head reaching for the ceiling. And then we see, can I lift that foot off the ground and stay balanced? Can I put that heel on the ground without bringing my body forward? Then can I pull myself forward from there? That is Tai Chi walking, and you just speed it up as you go faster. Tai Chi walking turning is being able to use your head to see, but then to spin your torso from the hip so that you maintain the upright position, like you're spinning on a center, like this. That's the Tai Chi turning, right? Is like this. And when you go into the martial arts, for example, it's the same idea, is that if I let's say that somebody's pressing against, actually, I'm over here, I'll just use you as my attacker, okay? So let's say that I put my hand out and M stop my hand, and then M pushes me. I let my torso go back behind my feet, right? So if I let that happen, go, push, she wins, I go off my feet. But if I know what my center is, but I cannot combat this because I'm not strong enough, right? Because if I was strong and she pushed, I could just push back. But let's say I'm not as strong. I turn my torso, you see? Because I know where my torso is. I know that as this is coming in, I can't handle that pressure. But because I know what neutral is, as soon as she pushes, my torso turns and then I get to push her. That's kind of where that comes from. Because now it's not just balance against myself, it's balance against external force. And so if the external force pushes me, and that might even be like, what if you get jostled by somebody, not even like they're trying to do anything to you, but you're just in a crowd or something happens, and then suddenly your shoulder goes over your foot, you fall. But if you understand how to hold that positioning, if you get jostled, you know that you know from your rocking practice and your Tai Chi walk, you know that this is not acceptable. But you know that if this starts to get moved, you just have to move your foot and your hip. And suddenly you've taken this to here, and now whatever's pushing you is over there. And you're able, so that's also how it helps keep you more stable, because you have an understanding of how there's only one balance, right? If we all stand here in our Tai Chi manner of neutral standing, there is no other neutral than neutral, right? I've got my foot balance, I've got my leg position, I've got my hips, I've got my rib cage, I've got my sternum, my shoulders, top of my head. That's neutral. This is not neutral, right? Because this is neutral. So because there's only one neutral, the more you practice that neutral, if you start to get pushed out of that neutral, you'll just be able to find neutral and rebalance yourself. If you get pushed and you're starting to fall, you can find neutral again because you understand where neutral is. So it also goes much more beyond just being stable for walking. It also goes beyond, it's actually, when you're walking, you're constantly practicing how to be the most balanced neutral position. You're understanding what that feels like, and you're building the muscle memory in. It's the same reason for rocking. You need to know, what does too much forward feel like? What does the middle feel like by comparison? What does too much back feel like? What does the middle feel like by comparison? And then eventually, if you just start moving back, you'll go back to the middle. Because you understand, like at first you have to move back quite a bit to know you're moving back to fix it. But eventually you can move back just like a centimeter. If you feel yourself drifting back, you immediately fix yourself to neutral. So you stop the fall earlier and earlier because you understand more about where is neutral and where does it start to go off. And then that way you're less likely to get pitched beyond the point of no return. And so it makes it's got so many benefits beyond just the walking part. But the great thing about practicing it as a walking discipline is we walk a lot. Right? And I mean, Al, you on that vacation you went on, you walked a lot, right? So you can imagine if you're on vacation, you're doing a lot of walking, and you at least, for some amount of the time, think to practice this method of walking, then you're constantly just practicing more and more ability to be neutral, right? To prevent falling, but also your leg muscles will get the most benefit because they're pushing you along in the way that our body has been engineered over thousands and thousands of years in order to exactly have us in the right position, the most efficient position. That's why disciplines like yoga, Pilates, all these things, they work so well. What are they doing? They're realigning us to original, right? Where we've lost that over time because as we age with injuries and work and stress, it pulls us into different positions that are not optimal. But we learn how to do it, right? And it's just like going back to what I was talking about at the beginning. If as we age, we get tighter in the hips, and this happens, especially to men, we get tighter in the hips. So the hip flexor muscle, it'll pull ourselves forward like this. We're not going to walk around with all our weight on our toes like this. Our brain is going to say, well, if you're going to go like that, and you're going to kind of if you're going to push my hips back and I'm going to make myself feel like I'm falling backwards, right? Well, your brain says, no, we don't want to do that. We want to be over the center of the feet. So it'll slouch your upper back so that what went back, it takes something forward. If you happen to do a lot of computer work and slouching forward is your position, well, now you're slightly forward and your brain, the survival mechanism, knows you're not even on your feet. How can we even it out? Let's stick your butt back. Okay, now you're even. But then now, of course, you're shutting off your glutes because you're tightening up. And they call that upper and lower cross syndrome. It was discovered like in the 60s or maybe in the 50s. But by doing this, we fight against that by putting ourselves back in the proper position. And every single movement discipline, you'll notice when you do yoga, Pilates, any martial art, all of them teach you proper posture. All of them teach you proper hip position, balance over your feet. It's universal because our bodies are all the same. We all have the skeleton, right? We all have to, for us to be most balanced and posturally good, that's just how it is. Yeah. Yes, you can absolutely apply it to walking backwards. So, for example, if I walk backwards by kind of fall walking, it looks like this. And eventually you speed up, well, you're going to move beyond the point of return. So of course, like you can all try this now. Put your foot back like that. Okay, drag with your foot until you're balanced over your foot. Then put your other foot back. You're just dragging not from heel to toe, but from toe to heel. You see? And you recognize, where do I have to stop and put the other foot down? But you're always dropping into the gravity that way. So if I'm walking backwards, if I hold my proper posture, you see, I'm still always going to be balanced over my foot. And that's the most important part, because our body has so much weight to it that if it pitches forward and goes beyond the point of no return, it has to fall, right? And then we could go further on into saying, well, that's also why doing resistance training, practicing, just simple footwork drills like going through the ladder, or just, kind of like doing, remember we used to do those out like karaoke step and stuff like that. That's so that if you do trip, you can throw your foot out. Resistance training makes your legs strong enough that when it lands like this, the muscles will actually hold you and stop you. But what are you doing to stop yourself? You're not going forward. Your body instinctively knows it has to drop. Well, look where my posture is: ears, shoulders, hips. If I drop directly down, I take all the weight into my feet and into the floor. So it's exactly the same principle, because again, it's universal. Our bodies they're all the same.
The question is, if he has like really quite severe balance issues to begin,
yeah,
to just do the kind of like transfer weight to just the one, what would be kind of the steady? So like in the beginning, would you be able to use like some kind of tool to begin with, or something like that?
Yeah, so if you have a severe balance issue, absolutely a pole or the walking poles, those kind of things are good. Making sure you don't rely on them, right, by putting all your weight on them, like you're trying to use them more as like a tripod, like to say, okay, these are going to help me feel a little bit more balanced, right? It's just like if I had a stick or a cane, I wouldn't want to be leaning on it like this, and then when I put it down, leaning on it, I would want to use it as sort of like an extra little bit of support, right? And so, yeah, you absolutely could. You could use something like this. That way you could sort of feel the balance and you could kind of play around with it a little bit. Thank you, my humble assistant. Here, right? And you of course can play around by using it as something to help you. But what I recommend over and above that, if you can, like that's fine. Like if you really have severe balance issues and you really need the security, but the way you can do it without it is when you shift the weight over to here, keep your other foot in the ground. Just weight it less. And you remember we would do that at some points too, right? And many people that I teach balance, I show them that too, is you don't have to, it doesn't have to be lifted off. It just needs to be a little bit less, right? And as time goes on, you can use a little bit less, but you're getting the feeling of using your legs for balance. When you go like this, you don't need to hold it. You can go from here and immediately put your heel down. Use that heel as a way to help you balance, but try to rely less on it as time goes on. Try to tap it and see, can I tap it? That helps me kind of feel the balance, and I'm not always having to hold the balance, but just by tapping it, it gives you the comfort, right? And then you can press it in the ground and you can walk. So I always recommend using your own other leg as your balance help first. But if you absolutely do not have great balance and you want another tool, use the other tool. Because let's say that you always need 2 sticks to walk with, like that's where someone's at. They really cannot walk at all anywhere without their 2 walking sticks. Well, Tai Chi walking is great for them too, because they're walking with those sticks. If they learn this method of walking with the balance and the posture, they'll use the sticks less to rely on. They'll just be there as an assistance to help with their leg strength, because oftentimes the arms are helping the legs. They're there to feel calmer and more relaxed because they know they have the sticks to help, but they'll rely on them less and less, and they'll be walking. Because you see a lot of times people walking with the sticks or a walker, they're bent right over it and they're leaning into it. And you know if that walker went, they're falling forward because they're not balanced over their feet. But you could imagine that if somebody even had a walker or sticks and they learned how to walk like this, they would be using the walker to help, but they would actually be helping their own posture, their own leg strength, their own balance by walking in a way of balance. So it kind of works for anybody. Even if you never are able to do Tai Chi walking without an aid, you'll always end up walking better and have less chance of falling, and your legs will get stronger and your posture will get better and everything will open up and loosen up and you'll just feel better in general. Okay, that's Tai Chi walking. So I will send you guys, obviously you can watch this again. In the email, I'll just mention the basic tips that you have to do, like the basic progression. Are there any other questions about that at this moment? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, so that's a good point. So noticing that when you're turning, you're noticing a torque on the knee. It's because you're doing it really slowly. Because let's look at a turn in real time. So in real time, as this goes, this pivots right away. So you don't get the knee torque. But when you're practicing it, absolutely, like because you're trying to drop it here and you're trying to turn, you're not doing it in real time. So your foot will get stuck there. But in real time, when this steps, this would already be pivoting on the toe, which would prevent the knee torque. Otherwise, we'd all be torquing our knees every time we turn. But that's a very good observation, right? It's the same way that when I teach people how to do rotation, they often don't move their front foot and they feel like they're cranking into it. And I have to say, well, this is the idea, but then the front foot sometimes has to either start by turning out a little bit, or as you rotate, you turn it and you rotate here to keep your knee safe. But that's a good observation. So if you're practicing it, make sure that when you turn, as you start pulling here, you turn on the ball of that foot, which will release your knee and let you go. Yeah, because if I'm going here, right? You see, I mean, if you want to do it like really precise, you could. It's harder balance-wise. You could, as you turn, you could be up on the toes of this foot and the heel on that foot, and then pull, and then go to the center. Yeah. So you just have to, or you could go here, and then before you start pushing with that, adjust this foot so it's turned already, then push and go. Because the most important thing about this is that when you're turning, your torso's doing that, right? Your torso's not leaning, but it's spinning. It's spinning like this. So that at all times you're staying balanced over your hips and then balanced over your foot. That's the real key of it, is the idea that if your torso's moving like this with no leaning, and when it turns on the center, and it always moves with no leaning. It's the leaning that takes you beyond your feet, forward, backwards, or sideways, that then means you're going to be off balance, right? Or if I lean like this, if I put this foot forward, I literally cannot touch that foot to the ground. Like you can all try, just do this one more thing. Try this. Lean your body forward like this. Put your foot out like this and try to put that foot on the ground without putting weight on it. It's harder, right? Because you've already got weight forward. But if you're standing tall and you put your foot out like this, it's much easier to put weight on it because you're not pitched forward. You can keep your weight over that foot and you can drag the weight on there. But it requires, if you don't have the abdominal tension and the focus on posture, you literally can't do it because you've bent forward, right? That's just how it is. So that's why like the practice of it is so important, because you have to do it kind of slowly and walk around doing it. And then when you're out and about, you got to try to think about it. Like, am I walking that way? Have I kind of gone back to walking a bit of a falling walk? Okay, let me fix it. And as time goes on, you think about it more, and eventually you just start walking that way better. Because one thing's for sure, everybody here's posture is better right now. As I look around, I see all of you, everyone's standing up because we've just done something that has been talking about posture all the time, right? And you know, so many people that I train, you know, they've had jobs that they've been hunched for because that's the way we work. Like, you know, you certainly wouldn't be doing dentistry behind your back. I mean, maybe you do that sometimes to show off to other dentists, like at a conference. Check this out, root canal, no look root canal. But you're not going to do that in your real practice. You're going to be like this. So everybody's here, right? So the advice I give, because almost everybody who I train wants to have better posture. Almost everybody does, right? It's absolutely true. Like, that's why people, they want that, because the world we live in is not conducive. And what I always tell them is, like, I can show you, we can row like this. We can do flies in here. We can do these, you know, all this stuff. That will make those muscles stronger to be able to pull things. It will make you more aware of them to understand how they pull your shoulders back. And it will make them able to do more work longer, so to hold your posture better for longer. But if you don't hold your posture, they're not going to automatically, just because you do a bunch of back work, you're not going to automatically be walking with proper posture. You're not, because most of the time, if you've worked yourself into poor posture, you're going to walk out that door and go back into the way that you normally do things, and you're not going to be thinking about it because you're thinking about it in here. So really, when I advise people on how to improve posture, I tell them it's not about what you do in here. Like, it is, because it helps you do the awareness. But if you want to make the reps are out there when you're not here. You're here once or twice a week, a couple hours a week. You're not going to be, that's not enough practice, right? The practice you need is the practice of when you're walking around and noticing you're kind of walking, like, just to fix it, and then just think about it, right? And if you have a pie chart, if you were doing 30% good posture and 70% bad posture on our imaginary pie chart, keep trying to make that 30% bigger, right? Just keep trying to make it bigger. Maybe it becomes 50-50 and you're thinking about it half the time. But eventually, if you could have it 80-20 for the rest of your life, that would probably be pretty good, because there's no way we're going to be having proper posture perfectly all the time. But if you can do it most of the time, everything is open and you have the reps in, and then generally you will eventually notice that, oh, I'm kind of doing it all the time. Or people might say, oh, you know, you've got really good posture. Or I've noticed your posture is a lot better than it was. And you know why it was, because you thought about it more. And you just, because, you know, all of us in here can do this. We can do this, all of us. But we can also all do this. What is doing that is you decided to do it, right? Your mind said, oh, I got to do this, and you did it. So really, everybody can have good posture, because we all in here have just proved it. But do we think about it enough? Are we aware of it enough in order to hold all the time, right? Which is a brilliant segue into my short presentation on meditation. So today, you guys, if you want, you can have a seat. Yeah, we're only going to do about another, like, maybe 15 minutes, because learning to meditate is very uncomplicated. But in talking about, you know, how do you get better posture, it's mindfulness, right? It's thinking about it. If you want to drink more water, you can't just magically drink more water. Now I'm feeling thirsty. Where did I put my water bottle? Just give me 1 second. I know I have it in here somewhere. I know I brought it. Oh, here we go. Okay. So my voice is a bit gravelly. These allergies are. I didn't take my Claritin this morning. Okay, so we know that in order to get good at something, you have to practice, but in order to practice it, you actually have to remember to practice it, or to think about practicing it, right? So even when you guys are sitting down, look at your posture. It's beautiful. It's amazing. I know, I can't believe Al's just looking at me with his steely eyes. He's like, that's right. Now Now I'm looking at you the whole time. I'm starting to get a little intimidated here, but it's okay. You keep that up, Alf. I look over and I see your eyes, like you say, I know it. Heather, everybody, I'm like, this is what I like. Everyone's looking at me in the eye. That means that their posture has to be really good. So to have good posture, to have that practice, you have to be mindful enough to remember to do it. Why don't we remember to do it? Does anybody have any idea of why we might not remember to do it? Yeah, like why wouldn't you remember to practice good posture? You could say, yeah, like not being mindful. Tired, yeah, tired. That could be a reason as well. But even simpler, I would say, you didn't think about it. A habit, right? But what is that, right? It's you have to think about it, right? So you're thinking about other things apart from practicing your posture. You're not going to think about practicing your posture. Now, these other things could be anything, but a lot of times they're things we're thinking of are maybe things that we're concerned about, right? There's other things, other thoughts in our mind, and we're not aware of those thoughts. Like we're not aware that we're thinking about a lot of things. Like we're worrying about certain things. We're not necessarily aware that we're worrying about them. We're not necessarily aware that, we're not thinking about what's happening right now, but we're thinking about what's going to happen later or what happened earlier. So mindfulness training is just a way to basically spend some time listening and noticing what's happening right now so that you can clear out some of the things that are that you're thinking about that maybe are not necessarily things you need to be thinking about right now. And that will then allow you to have space to be able to think about things like, hey, maybe I could think about doing my posture more. So if you look at the whiteboard, I've made a list of, this is obviously not exhaustive, but benefits of meditation, okay? I'm going to read it out. So this is just some of the benefits. Reduce stress and anxiety. These are all kind of proven in studies, all right, how meditation helps. Improve focus and concentration, emotional regulation, enhanced self-awareness, improved sleep, increased creativity, improved memory, lower blood pressure, lower resting heart rate, improved immune function, reduced chronic pain, improved cardiovascular health. So those are many things that would be great, right, to be able to have the benefit of meditation. But if you want to improve those things, you cannot think about those things. You can't. Because if you're doing it, and this is just what has been talked about for thousands of years, bit dramatic, I know, but that has been talked about for thousands of years. This is not stuff I've come up with, it's things that they've been talking about for thousands of years. If you try to do mindfulness training to get an end result, it doesn't work. You can know that those are the things that it'll help with, but then you should just forget about that and then just do it. Don't do it thinking of a goal, because then you'll be thinking of the goal and not doing the mindfulness practice. So really, this, I would say, is the best benefit of all, and something that maybe you can think about a little bit, which is peace of mind. That's really the greatest benefit, because with peace of mind, all those other things will happen of themselves. And really, in my experience, and in the experience, again, of people who've been writing about this for a long, multiple generations of time, this is what they say. You just have to do it, and all the benefits of it will come from doing it, as long as you don't sit there trying to make the benefits happen and force it to happen. So if you want one thing to think about, just think about how nice it would be to have more peace of mind. And more is very important, because also perfection is not something that you can be after if you're trying to be more mindful, because we're not perfect in anything at all. And trying to do it in a way to have no thoughts, to be perfectly still and quiet and have absolutely no thoughts, no worries, no nothing, and know everything that's going to happen, and have absolutely no worries at all, would be the most boring place to be in your entire life. And if you ever reach that exalted place, you would either disappear into the heavens on a lotus flower, or you would say, you know what, I need some problems. I need some things I don't know are going to happen so that I can be excited about things that are going to happen, right? And again, it's not what I'm saying. This is just what people have been saying for a long time. So that's about all I really want to say about the benefits, because we've all read that, we all know that, and we can all kind of feel that within ourselves anyway when you think about it. So all I really want to do is show you a very easy way to do it. And then if you practice it on a semi-regular basis, but again, don't stress about practicing it. Don't try to set a schedule. Just, it's nice if you can do it every day, but if you can't, don't get stressed out about not doing it, because that kind of defeats the purpose of it as well. So number one is positionally. You can meditate while walking, you can meditate while standing, you can meditate while sitting, you can meditate while lying, though it's not always necessarily recommend unless you're really refreshed and you know you won't fall asleep. But what seems to be universally accepted is, at least if you are doing any of those other practices, sitting meditation is the one that you should definitely do, because it's the one that is the easiest to get into the meditative state doing. You can sit however you want. The only recommendation that has come down over all this time is don't sit too comfortably. So what that means is, it's okay to have a backrest, but it might be better to be like Al, sitting on an exercise bench with no backrest, because holding yourself up with the posture is also just a way to keep you aware of what's happening, right? Where you are, what's going on, because you actually have to be a little bit aware of the body that you're in. You can't just completely slump down and not think about it. So you can sit on a chair. If you're comfortable sitting cross-legged, you can sit cross-legged. You can sit, kneeling. There's many different meditative postures. If you have the flexibility, you can do a half lotus where one foot crosses, the other one tucks up over and goes into the leg. Anything is fine. You'll see that there are lots of recommended poses, but really it's what you're doing that matters, not how you're sitting. But if you can sit in a way that requires just a little bit of effort to sit up nice and tall, that will also keep you more in the moment, because you have to actually think about how you're sitting. And that's not really a like discursive thought. It is what it is, right? Oh, I'm starting to slouch. Let me just sit up again. So that's the first thing, is you just find a way to sit. So you're just sitting there. You can have your eyes open or closed. Like some, like Zen meditation, they sit and they face a wall, they just stare at the wall. So that's sort of a version of having your eyes closed in a way, because you're not looking at anything, you're just looking at a wall. But I find that most people do best when they just close their eyes. You close your eyes, you just shut out what you can see, and you're just able to feel. Then there are many different breathing methods, but at first don't think about breathing methods, just breathe. Because what you may or may not be surprised to find out is you will. You definitely will breathe. And you don't even have to think about how you're breathing, you will just breathe. You might notice how you're breathing. Like you might notice that you're breathing in a shallow way, or you're breathing in a way where you're making some weird sort of tensions or whatever. You might notice that. Generally, if you just sit and breathe, your breathing will calm down of itself, because you're sitting in a calm way. And it'll just become a nice metered breath. Ideally, if you're not stuffed up, it's good to breathe in and out through your nose. That's the calmest for your nervous system, is nose breathing. In the same way that when you're doing most exercise, except for heavy exercise, you should learn to nose breathe, because you can do it. You just feel at first like you're not getting the oxygen when you're working hard, but it keeps your central nervous system calm and actually allows you to do more even when you're exerting yourself. When you're exerting yourself to a high degree, obviously you have to do some mouth breathing, because you need it. You need to do it. So nose breathing is ideal, or in through the nose, out through the mouth, and don't think too much about breathing. Then you just listen. That's it. Just listen, because you will hear things. If you can hear, you will hear things. Even if you can't hear, you will hear or experience things, right? Because you're there, things are happening. What you want to try to do is to just listen without attaching to what you're hearing. So if you hear someone talking, or you hear a car, or you hear a plane, or a door opens and closes, trying to just listen to it as a sound, and not trying to put that's a door, that's a voice, that's a car, because your brain will already do that for you. It knows what it is, and it'll tell you what it is, and you don't really need to think about what it is. So you're listening. And that's what reality is right now. So if we just sit here for 20 seconds and just breathe and listen. So generally for about 20 seconds, you can pretty much just listen. And you actually might not even think of much because you're trying to listen. But after 30, 40 seconds, you'll start thinking about things. You can't help it because we're always thinking, always. You're not trying to not think. So this is a big misconception about meditation or mindfulness training, is that you're trying to have a blank mind. Impossible. You can't have a blank mind. And again, if you did have a blank mind, literally had a blank mind, you would wish for things to think about, because that would be, you'd have nothing. There'd be nothing would be happening, right? What would be the point? So you're always thinking, you're going to be thinking about things. So what you're not trying to do is to blank your mind out, because you will get very frustrated. Because a thought will come in, oh, get rid of that thought. And another thought will come in, you try to get rid of that thought. And then it becomes a frustrating process of trying to stop yourself from thinking, which is totally impossible. All you're really trying to do is to notice that you're thinking, and then try to start listening again. Because what will often happen is you'll start thinking, and like 2 minutes later, you realize that you're not listening anymore. You're now thinking about that thing. Who knows what that is, right? Like, I got to mow the lawn, or I had a conversation, or I've got to go to the hardware store, or whatever it is, something that happened 30 years ago. Who knows, right? I mean, one thing that I have heard said that I think is really great is that if you really want to know what's happening, close your eyes and sit quietly. If you really want to know what you're thinking about, do that. And you will find out things you're thinking about you did not realize you were thinking about. They will be there because they were there in your subconscious, and you were out doing stuff and focusing on stuff. You actually realize what you're really thinking about. And it's really great because it's very helpful to know that. But it's so simple, but not easy. It's easy to get frustrated, but don't get frustrated. Sometimes you'll sit there and you'll listen for 10 seconds, and suddenly you'll find yourself 2 minutes later, you thought you were thinking about this one thing over and over again. Oh my gosh, and then you stop thinking about it, and then you start listening again. But then within 30 seconds, you're thinking about something for another 2 minutes, and oh my God, where did I go? Okay, I'm gonna go back into listening. Don't be frustrated, because the fact that you realized you were thinking about something and that you caught it and you went back to listening, that is actually what you're trying to do in mindfulness training. It's exactly that. It's catch it and go back to listening. If you find that you're catching yourself thinking more often every time you meditate, that's improvement. It seems like, oh, I'm not improving. Like, I'm constantly catching myself. Like, the first time I caught myself thinking only 3 times. The 10th time, I caught myself thinking 20 times in the same time period. Well, that's good, because now you're learning to catch yourself quicker. And the thoughts are just coming quicker because they're still trying to get in, but you keep interrupting them, going back to listening, but then they come in, but then you interrupt them again. So that's actually progress. And that literally is all we're trying to do, is to just sit quietly, close our eyes, let yourself breathe, and just try to listen to what's going on around you. When a thought comes into your mind, or a judgment on what you hear, be aware of it. Don't try to get rid of it right away. Like, look at it and say, oh, that's what that is. Oh, that's a thought. Interesting. Okay. You have to acknowledge it and say, okay, I see you there. All right. Now I'm going to go back to listening again. And you just keep repeating that process over and over again, and you eventually get much better at listening and not getting caught thinking as much. And then you could say the benefit for peace of mind means that you're in the present more often. And the space that you have in the present means that if you want to focus on your posture, you will have lots more room to remember to focus on your posture and to think about, oh, I'm going to focus on my posture. And actually just that is your thought, is, oh, I'm just, because you could say that it's a thought, but also it's a feeling, right? Like, if I want to think of my posture, I just have to hold myself there. I'm just doing posture, and I'm walking around, and I'm just being aware of the fact that I'm trying to have good posture. And the more I can be aware of that for the longer period of time during my walk, the more time I will have practicing my posture. And as time goes on, I don't really want to get into the benefits of it very much at all, because really, like for Zen meditation, which is very, very old meditative method, it's all about the doing of it and getting the experience out of the doing it. It's not about reading about it so much. It's not about studying and studying. It's the best benefits come from just, it's good to know about things, it's good to read about things, but if you don't practice, you don't know yourself, you don't know your own mind. And there's lots, if you ever read any of the literature around Zen, they often talk about that, how there are people who appear to be very accomplished in it because they can recite all the sutras, they can talk about all the essays in the books, but then other people would say of them, well, they never really got it because they memorized all the books and all but they never really knew who they were. They never worked on themselves. They never figured their own self out. They just learned all this stuff to tell other people. But the real realization was the practicing of it and figuring it out on your own. And in that way, it can also take the stress off of it, because you're just sitting quietly doing nothing, really. You're just listening, and you get up and you go about your day. And if you do it on a regular basis, you will definitely start noticing things that are helpful to you, but you don't really want to think about them too much. So I'm going to give you guys one example that I found for myself. Was that I really had a hard time remembering things like if I locked the car, or another one was the number for the parking, like the meter number. And I just found myself having a really hard time. And I had realized around the same time that I hadn't been doing my meditation practice for a little while. Like I'd gotten, had a lot of anxiety and other stuff going on. I just had not really been doing it. And so I not that I did it because of that, but I was just noticing things like that I was so caught up in thought that I wasn't able to remember. I'd look at it, I'd walk away, and I tried typing my phone. By the time I started typing my phone, I forgot what the number was. And I have to go back. And I was parking downtown a lot for work, and I was constantly doing that. Like I'd get inside the building and have to go back out, and I'm like, oh man. And then I sort of, maybe around that time, it was because of that, I was going through a lot of anxiety. I realized, oh, I haven't been doing my meditation practice much. I'd like to get back to that. I think it'd be good. I know that it makes me feel better and calmer. So I did it. And within not that long a time period, I could always remember that number. And even now, I never forget it. Like I look at it once and I just walk off and I just type it in. And that was something I was not good at for a long time, like little like short-term things. If I locked the car, I couldn't remember if I locked the car. I have to go back out to the car all the time. But now I just find that I remember it, and I would say that a lot of that, likely because that's what I started doing, was getting back into my mindfulness practice. Suddenly, I was just not so caught up in thought. And I'm an anxious person. I still have times when I'm caught up in anxious thought, but it's less. And that's the really important thing to remember, just in closing, is that it's something you want to do it's fun. It's nice. Just like you like it. You just get to sit there and not have to have any input. You just get to sit there and listen. It's like just a nice break in general, but that you will start noticing that there are little benefits that you get if your mind does tend to race a little bit, or if you're in a situation where things are really coming at you, because you've been in that place of calm listening, you can go to that place when all these things are happening, and you can make the decision based upon not the external noise, but based upon your own decision making, not influenced by the input that you're getting. So that's another, you could say, like a nice benefit of it is just that you're able to in a very stressful situation, just take everything as noise and find yourself, and then understand what it is that you really want to do. You have a question?
No, I was just gonna say that, like, it sounds like when you meditate, seems to be so distracted all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Or, like, they often say that mindfulness meditation kind of would have because it's allowing you to practice the habit of focusing your mind a bit better.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because you could say like mindfulness meditation is basically the same thing. Like meditation practice is a mindfulness practice, and if you meditate, you become more mindful. And that's sort of the idea, right? Yeah.
Or two is like, if you find it really difficult, like one thing that you could do is to start with mindfulness, where every time you stand up and sit down, you have to just say it to yourself, I'm standing up or I'm sitting down. And if you do that and then incorporate that as practice, it allows you to realize that it's a thing that you do unconsciously, but if you start focusing your mind and actually saying, like, well, I'm doing these things, it allows you to be able to focus in terms of like all the little things that you're doing.
Yeah.
So that you're not so distracted by
Yeah. And you could say like the mindfulness practice of saying I'm standing up, I'm sitting down, that's actually like a miniature meditation. It's a miniature moment of being there, right? And knowing what you're doing. Absolutely. Because I mean, I'll just close with this is that when I was doing the car locking thing, the way that I just remembered now, one of the ways that I really helped myself was I realized that through getting back to my meditative practice of noticing, I'm like, okay, so all I have to do is I just have to notice that I'm locking the door. Like I can't just lock it and walk off. So what I would do is I would press it and say to myself, I'm locking it. Like I would just stop and just only lock the door and not do anything else. Then I knew, because when I walked in the building, I'm like, I know I just said to myself, like I remember that moment because I only allowed that to be the moment. That's what I'm doing right now. So it's exactly like what you say. Like if you think about standing up and sitting down, every time you stand up and sit down, that's a little snack of meditation or mindfulness practice, because you're saying that I'm not just going to stand up, I'm actually going to have to know I'm standing up. And then in that way, you really figure it out. There's a really great quote from this book of Zen stories about this monk who was studying and felt he'd become enlightened. And so he was very excited. It was raining outside, and he rushed over to his master's house to say, I've done it, because when you feel that, you go to your master to get confirmation of your enlightenment. So he goes to his master's house, he takes off his sandals, puts his umbrella down, he goes into the master's chamber, and the master's there, and he says, Master, I've done it. Like I've studied all these years, and I did it. I finally freed my mind. I've been enlightened. I've done it. And the master said, oh, that's very interesting. When you came in just now, it was raining, so I take it you had an umbrella and your sandals. Yes. What side of the room at the front there did you leave your umbrella? The monk. He turned around and he went back out and spent 5 more years meditating in the hall until he attained what he called his every minute Zen, because he realized that he was in such a rush to boast about his enlightenment, he wasn't noticing every moment. He would just threw the umbrella down, had no idea where he left it. And I think that's like a great little sort of tale about kind of like what you are kind of trying to achieve when you're practicing mindfulness is exactly that. Like in the ideal world, that you would know everything you did. You would be able to be aware of everything that you did. All right, everyone. We are done. I thank you all for your attendance, both live and those who are watching it later, and those who were here live and are watching it later.